So, but what if people don't look at marriage as a system and they look at it like, I know obviously it binds two people together.
Does it?
Well, it does.
Does
But
it?
on paper, yes, of course.
When you say bind, though, that's the wrong word. It prisons two people in the same prison.
No,
together.
because I wouldn't say prison if the two people are completely down for marriage for life.
remember, a prison is an expectation.
Yeah.
It is not. We're not
But
talking
if
about
you-
prison
if-
in
but
the
but
physical
if you
realm.
like that, if you say you genuinely are in love with a person and you're 100% down to be with that person for life, like you commit. You're like,
well, you're only
for
down
life.
at the moment you choose that person. You
Yeah.
will not be down the road at some point.
that's
no,
not true.
you might be, but
That's
I'm
not
saying
true.
that it's possible that you're not.
Yeah,
Right.
But I'm saying that there is a lot of relationships, and I know personally, who they've been married for 30 years and they are still happily married to this day.
Okay.
Still happy, and they're like, "I'm with you until I'm dead,"
And that's
a commitment thing,
right.
But, so like those people don't
it's-
see that as prison.
So right, but that's okay. Again, we're not questioning one's ability to engage in a relationship.
Right.
We're talking about one's ability to leave a relationship.
No, why?
What do you mean why?
Why are we talking about leaving a relationship?
Because that's when a marriage becomes an issue. A marriage is not an issue when you want to be in a relationship. A
No.
marriage is an issue when you want to exit a relationship.
But I'm talking about never getting married in the first. When I said the dynamic of relationships like 60 years ago versus today,
Right,
I
but
didn't mean getting divorced.
Well, that comes down to your expectation. But the divorce is a very big part of a marriage because it is the exit
Not
of
if
a
you never
marriage
get
that
married
you-
in the first place.
That's an absolute, right? It's like saying you go or don't go to school. There's no such thing as like one is good, one is bad.
Right.
Like
But
there is still value in going to school as much as there's
I'm not
value
making
in
my,
having
my,
a marriage.
My question is, will marriage even exist in fucking 10 years from now? Will people even think
as
about
long
getting
as
married?
as long as church exists, marriage will exist.
Yeah.
Will it look as appealing to people with the wake of global connectivity with
Yeah.
social media and with email and with the ability to reach people and see people
Right.
and know what's
Yeah.
happening?
It's just different
Maybe
now,
not. Maybe it's not as appealing to the masses, but I don't see how it would be forgotten as long as a religious component exists.
What do you think would happen to the world,
If you take the church out of
money-wise,
it, then-
finance-wise, mortgages, like splitting half and half? Like if people want to spend the rest of their lives together, but they don't want to get married,
Well, I do this. Like for example,
Right.
like I've been married.
Yeah.
I
But after
didn't-
7 years
but
of
I
somebody
didn't see
living
the
with you-
No, I didn't see the value in the marriage.
right?
Also, there's the other conversation, which is, the prenuptial agreements, the ability to handle finances and clarity in what happens should there be a breakup. What I'm saying is, it doesn't have to become such a burden if you use. I always say, master the system. There's a system to get married, right? You know what you do, you go get married. There's also a system to navigate those who do not. You have prenups, you have postnups, you have legal rights, you have contracts, right? The unpleasantry is what makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
They go, like it's kind of weird for me. But
But
I
you're
always
saying
say,
of not getting married.
no, of going to a prenup before marriage. They're like,
Yeah, because
it kind of
it
says
shows
I
the
don't
growth.
trust you.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it's not true. It shows that I'm clearly defining
But
where the government. You see, this is
it's
if you
not
change.
the person's problem that's getting the prenup that has the issue. It's what he thinks.
No.
the world is gonna
Well,
think.
it's because of the prison of expectation. If you go into a prenup saying I am protecting myself from you, then of course that means I'm not.
right.
I am not trusting you, so I want to protect myself from you. I believe you mean me harm. That is how most men go into it. Like there's a some kind of confrontation occurring
Right.
based on mistrust. I say if you go into it, why don't you go into it from the stake of I don't want the government to have a say in our relationship.
Right. That I agree
and
with.
for that sake,
That
I
I agree
am
with.
drafting a contract that should you choose not to be with me for any reason, should I choose not to be with you for any reason, today, 10 years, 15, 20, in 100, maybe before we're dead. Here are some clear guidelines so that we don't have to allow a judge who doesn't know either one of us to make such a
Yeah,
decision.
I agree with that. I agree
Now,
with that.
if you go into it that way, who's the enemy? Well, the person trying to decide what happens to you and your family when they have no correlation to anything. It's no longer a confrontation of you and her. It's a mutual decision coming from a time of love, not a time of hate.
Right.
I've related buying a car to this many times because I've said you fall in love with your car when you buy it. So you overlook a high interest rate, you overlook the down payment, you overlook the condition of the car, and all of these little issues that you're not seeing, often because your emotion allows you to move forward in the process. And on the other side of the coin, right, you basically look at the other element, which is I'm done with this car. I found a better car or something that no longer resonates with me with this car. It's broken down a lot.
Right.
The moment you bought it, you didn't expect it to break down a lot.
Right.
The moment you got married, you didn't expect your wife to turn crazy when something happens, right? Like
100%,
you don't know.
yeah.
So what I'm saying is,
so I think
at the
but-
time
but
of divorce,
here's-
though,
but
is
here's
when
the thing.
when things get tough.
When you date somebody for 6 or 7 years before you get married, which
Mm-hmm.
is usually normal. Like people don't just go into a they do, like there is relationships, there is some scenarios where people get into a relationship and with 6 months they're fucking married. Usually people do it the way of like, okay, let me date this person for 6-7 years, live with them, get to know their ins and outs.
I wish people did it that way. That's historically
but
that's
that's how most
that's
people
not
do.
statistically. That's not what most people do. That's what maybe people like you and I may do because we have this intelligence about us to say let's truly see if we're compatible
Right,
before
yeah,
we
yeah.
add a layer of government into this or church into this. But
So you're
it
saying
is
you think most people get married on
within 2 to 3 years? And actually, I'll tell you something
Yeah,
interesting.
that's way too soon.
Well, I'll tell you something interesting. Statistically, people who get married faster tend to have longer relationships. You know why? Because they're still in the discovery phase together,
Right.
and their relationships last longer because they adapt to growth together.
That's
Versus
interesting.
people who have grown apart and have just basically co-lived,
Right.
and then add a materialistic piece of paper that has no relevance on anything,
I gotta know that.
and then changes the dynamic of a relationship for no reason. You know what I mean? It's almost like saying like,
So
hey,
do you think-
everything's fine, but as soon as you get a warranty on your car, it goes to shit and it goes to the shop every week, and you're
Right.
like, what the? Like
Yeah.
it was fine before. When you are basically living with someone, right, for 6 years, and you've done it successfully,
Right. Yeah.
there is no need to add an indicator like a piece of paper to change the dynamic of the situation. Now,
The girl-
there is the legality.
girl usually
there is
wants it,
right. But here's what you just said is the issue. One party wants it, right? But I think this is where expectation comes in. You have to have these conversations early on. I think what a lot of men do is lead women on to believe they would, and then change their mind because they're like, oh, I don't want to scare her and be like, I'll never get married.
Right.
I think if from the beginning you go, listen, like we can have the best relationship, we can even have children, whatever you want. I'm just never gonna go through a physical marriage on paper.
But you have the wedding, you give them a ring, like all that
if
stuff.
that
yeah,
makes them
like,
happy,
yeah,
meaning
yeah.
like listen, I can have a ceremony to ceremonize my alliance with someone, even
Right.
as a friend. I can
Right.
say my friend and I are basically going in business together. Let's have a celebration.
Right.
I can have a celebration with me and this woman like love each other. We're celebrating 10 years together. That's great, but it doesn't have to involve a church.
Some people will look at this in a way of, yeah, that's really smart, just in case anything ever did happen. And then other people are going to look at it in a way of like, well, dude, that's just a cop-out. That's just proving that you don't truly, truly love the person. Because if you did, you wouldn't need any type of way to exit that relationship.
Well,
But
I agree
with your part, because I do think that people, I mean, I don't think I know. People fucking change. Things
Right.
happen down the
Things
road.
happen
like-
that you're not expecting.
and,
that
and,
have
and
no
you
know.
can't control it, and
Right.
and like if something were to happen, like if you're legally together on paper and half of your shit is hers and she decides to go and fuck 20 guys behind your back,
And shit happens.
But
The unexpected
it's a
happens
very,
in,
like,
in the
aggressive-
bizarrest of ways. And what
Yeah.
I'm saying is, you love someone today, right?
Yeah.
You love your car. You buy a new Ferrari. It's the
Sure.
most exciting thing in your life for the next 6 months.
that's the novelty though.
But right, and that wears off. And six
Yes,
months later,
novelty does, but I
What?
don't think love does.
right? But
Like
love
think about
changes.
think about a friend.
Love
Like
changes.
think about your mom, right?
Love changes.
Has your love ever, not your appreciation for your mom, has your love ever
Absolutely.
changed for your mom? Why?
How I've loved my mom.
No,
has changed.
that's
no.
that's how you see your mom
No,
now.
how I've loved my mom changes, and what happens is
Because you became more mature.
Right, but let me-
But
right,
you
right,
love your
right.
mom stronger.
Right, but in a different
So-
way. So what happens in a relationship is that sometimes the way that's received changes. Maybe I've
Yeah.
gone from being a person that's all about romantic and bringing roses, and the next day I'm all about like, I'm gonna fix your car. And you go, oh my God, that's amazing, but that's not showing me you love me. And to me, it's like,
Right,
that's
the
my
love-
new
the
love
love
language.
language
Like
is
it's
like-
changed.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
changed, it's changed.
Right.
And you go, well, that's not what I want in my life. So you change. The point of control over that, and we'll leave it at that, is basically that you can't predict the unpredictable. So you prepare so that you don't hinder the next 10 years of your life trying to rectify 5 years you couldn't explain.
Okay, so advice to somebody who's 20, 21, 22, 18.
Don't
30.
marry anyone until you know yourself enough to know your own judgment values and to know the direction of the life you see.
And also live with the person for at least
Well,
3 years.
living with
before.
someone or not is a
No.
personal decision. You don't have to. You can
You're in
choose
for a rude
to.
awakening if
You
don't.
can choose to.
Yeah.